All right, we're going to move through our agenda very quickly so we can get to our special guest speaker. So first, I wanted to update you on the situation that's going on with Maryland PTA that we've been talking about. So we did have some good news that the U.S. District, so a national PTA prevailed on 2 motions in U.S. District Court. And so there's no longer temporary restraining order on the restructuring of Maryland PTA. So national is going to be moving forward with restructuring Maryland PTA. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, but what we are expecting is that after it's all done, we're going to be able to vote electronically and have official votes. So that is great news for us. Okay, I also wanted to update you on November 2nd. We had 6 of our students, SGA students, testified in front of the Board of Education at the Capital Improvement Program meeting. They were fantastic. We do have a link that I'll share on the Facebook page, and we'll share it through our listservs as well to the hearing where our students testified. It was a pre-recorded video. Is incredibly impactful. And our 6 students were the only students testifying that night, which was really great. They also started off the meeting, and the way testimony works is that there's a series of testimonies, and then there's a break and the board asks questions. All of the testimony before the question period was Wooten students. And so the whole question period was all around the issues around Wooten, with safety issues, ADA issues, and the renovation to the building. So it was a really great conversation. Learned a lot. We have our, according to the board and the staff at MCPS, planning will begin in September of 2024 for the renovation and due to be completed by September of 2027. So many of our families won't be here at that point, but I know we have some students in elementary, middle school that will be here. So, but we'll keep pushing on that, and we'll need everyone's support. The next testimony will happen in front of the Montgomery County Council in, I believe, in February. So we'll keep you posted on that. And then we have some positions that are remaining open. We have a corresponding secretary position that's open. That's an officer position. We are looking to fill that position. That position coordinates for all of our communication across social media, our website, and our newsletter. So really key position, and they help to coordinate all the various meetings as well. And then we have our fundraising chair position, which was a new position that was created this year. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Nikki to give the membership and treasurer update.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Let me get the video fixed. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. So just a quick update on membership. Right now, our membership is at 947 members, which is much higher than we expected this year. It is down a little bit from last year. Last year, we were at 1,048 members. But we feel pretty positive about this. As you can see from this treasurer's report, we are over by $3,000 our anticipated revenue just from parent memberships alone. So again, we're feeling pretty good about that. A little update on membership cards. You know, normally we hand out physical cards at our meetings. This year, Maryland PTA had planned for us to transition to Member Hub. And using Member Hub, you will receive electronic cards. However, right now, because of everything that's been going on, we haven't remitted the state and national dues to Maryland PTA. As soon as things are settled and we can remit those payments, you will receive an electronic card from Member Hub. Right now, all of your information is in there. If you're a paid member, it's just waiting for that payment to be made. So you can expect to get that, and I'll send out a communication when that's going to be happening, so you can look out for that. Also, the directories went to mail. So if you haven't received it yet, and you did pay for a parent membership, you should be receiving that very soon. If you don't receive it by the end of the month, please let me know. I do have a few extra copies, and so in case something gets lost in the mail, I can definitely arrange to get that over to you. So let's see, next thing, as far as treasurer's report, you can see here that our income to date for the year is $30,422.41. Our budget was $25,075. So we're, again, we're exceeding what we had budgeted for the year. And a lot of that is due to the parent memberships, and also because we've been very successful with our mock SAT, ACT testing this year, opening it up to multiple companies. There's been a lot of interest in that as well. A little note that usually after we finish our annual financial review, which is due October 31st each year, usually at a meeting we will present that and then vote that in. It is available on our website right now, a copy of that. And as soon as we're able to do electronic voting, which we're again hoping that that's going to be soon, we will get that voted in. But I did put it up on the website. It's on the meetings page. So it's on the page where I put all of the videos, the recordings of these meetings. And so if you'd like to review that, that is up there for you. As far as I just mentioned these mock SAT, ACT dates, I did just post some new dates today. Everest sent me over some new dates. I'm going to be sending out an email tomorrow to remind parents about that. Also tomorrow, I'm going to be sending out a reminder about this Friday's coffee chat with Ms. Bolden. And if you'd like to send any questions, you can reply to that email. I also want to take this time to remind everyone about our design competition that we have going on for a new logo that's going to be just for the PTSA. All of the details about the competition are on our website. There's a link right from our front page to it. And those are all going to be due December 1st. And again, all the details are there. We've got a list of frequently asked questions. We've had a lot of great questions come in from students whenever they come in. We post those to that site with the answer that we gave to that student. And so we're really excited about that. And I'm still working on the voting and how that's going to work, but every member is going to get one vote for the competition, and details about that will be out as soon as we have that all put together. And yep, that's everything I've got. So I will stop sharing this. Okay.
And then we'll move on to Ms. Bolden for your updates.
Do you ask questions at some point later on, or how does that work? Brian?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
I say, are you allowed to ask questions in between, or you?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions you can go ahead and ask right now.
Yeah, and feel free, everyone, to use the chat or to just jump in here if you have a question.
All right, Nikki, there was a line item on the budget. I just wanted to educate myself a bit better. So the mock SAT, ACT, is that the school sponsoring mock testing for kids at a grade level, 11, 12 grade? How does that work?
How does the mock testing work as far as like what is PTSA's involvement with it?
Exactly.
So the way it's worked in the past, we were partnering with Potomac Education Center. When I came into the PTSA, that was the company we were, I think, affiliated with because someone on the PTSA, I believe, had a connection there. And so the way it works is essentially the money that is paid for that, that's a donation to the PTSA, in that we're facilitating having them set up those dates for Wooten students to take that testing. This year we decided to open it up to other companies, to anyone in the community that wanted to also participate. And Deepa has been heading that up and working with the other companies to get that done. And so Everest this year and Potomac Oak Tutoring, those are two new companies that we're offering it through. And so basically how it works is that they kind of come up with the dates that they want to offer it and kind of the format that they want to offer it. And then they let us know. And then I populate all of that information on the website and create the stores like for the payment and handle kind of all the coordination of that. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so now we'll move to Ms. Bolden for any updates.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Raven. Thank you so much for this evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to first give a huge thank you to the PTSA. As you can hear, the PTSA is so involved in so many of our endeavors, whether it is organizing our students for the advocacy of a new building, to the most recent endeavor of supporting our staff with staff appreciation and everything in between, grants, and wonderful programming like this with Dr. Bonenkamp to talk about mental health in our students during this time. So I just can't tell you how much I appreciate all of the collective efforts of everyone in the PTSA to keep Wootton connected and in touch with those areas that really matter. So thank you so very much for all of those efforts and everything that you continue to do. So we are starting our second quarter. We have started our second quarter. And so we are very appreciative that we made it through first quarter. It seemed like quite an uphill battle there at times to move into a virtual environment in the way in which we did. But I am really pleased with the progress that our students are making. We ended the quarter just a week ago, November 6th, actually. And I would like to say that grades will be active in Parent View starting November 24th. You'll be able to see your students' grades for first marking period, November 24th. If you're not connected to Parent View, this is a plug to become connected to Parent View as soon as possible. It's a pretty easy and straightforward way to be connected to the online data system. So that, and there are all kinds of information available to you there. And of course, if you have any questions or concerns or need help with activation, the front office staff has become pretty adept with helping. So all you have to do is give a call and our front office staff would be happy to help with that. You've also received a survey from MCPS about if health conditions allow, what would be your student and your family's decision in terms of continuing with hybrid, a schedule, virtual or in-person learning. We do need 100% rate of return on that survey. So this is my first request, and I'll be making many more in the coming weeks, to please fill out that survey and truly fill it out to the best of your ability at right now. As we know, COVID cases are surging. There's a lot of question about, if the safety conditions will allow for us to come back in person and what time frame that would happen. So we understand that this is all very tentative and you're making the best decisions for your families and for your students. But we would like to have some indication at this point of your desire as a family in terms of what that would look like if we are able, and I can't emphasize enough, if we are able to come back and the safety conditions will allow. So I would appreciate your feedback on that. In addition, I would also just like to say that we've done some survey data at school, and thank you for those of you that filled out our parent survey regarding our virtual learning environment for first marking period. We are still collating that data and disaggregating it, but we'll certainly come back and share with you what you have said overall about the virtual environment, as well as our students and our staff. So far, it seems pretty positive for all of the circumstances and what they are in terms of the response and what we've been able to do and how we're supporting our students. But of course, we're always looking at making sure we're getting feedback and making updates as we get information and need to make those adjustments. So we will be doing some of that work in the coming weeks to make sure that we have the best possible environment for our students as possible. So again, I appreciate and thank you for your cooperation and all of that, in providing us with feedback and providing us with your experiences so that we can make this a better situation for our students. And finally, because I know that we have a really full agenda this evening and I'm anxious to hear Dr. Bodenkamp as well, I would just like to say I hope you all have a fabulous Thanksgiving. I am sure, like my family, it is going to look different, but it does not change the gratitude that I have for our Wootton community, and wishing you just a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, maybe Zoom free, I don't know, but just a nice time to relax and reflect on our family and friends and what we're all so grateful for. And I'm certainly grateful for this community and all the good that you do in keeping our students healthy and safe and connected to school. So with that, I will turn it back over to Mr. Rabin, and thank you again. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Ms. Bolden. So I just wanted to let everyone know that our next month's general meeting is going to have our annual alumni panel. And so for the alumni panel, we're looking for students that started college this year. It's an unusual year, and we want to be able to have them join our panel. And so Nikki will be sending out something about that and very soon. And but if you have a student who's interested, please reach out to Nikki and let her know that they're interested in being on the panel. But we had about 20 students last year on the panel, and it was very well attended. So it's a good opportunity for parents to hear about college, and especially right now, how things are going. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jill Bodenkamp, who is an assistant professor and core faculty at the National Center for School Mental Health within the Division of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. And Dr. Bodenkamp's here to talk about mental health for teens, and recently appeared at the MCPS Mental Health Awareness Week, one of those sessions. So with that, turn it over to Dr. Bodenkamp. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, great.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here this evening. And yeah, I have some slides that I'll pull up in just a second. Let me get those going, and we'll present some information on supporting mental health, but then of course want to leave time for questions and to have some discussion if that's helpful. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Can you all see that okay? Okay, and let me just do that. Still good? Is it in presenter view, or you're just seeing the screen?
You can see the screen.
Okay, all right, perfect. So I'm a clinical and school psychologist by training, and I'm on the faculty at the University of Maryland School of Medicine at our National Center for School Mental Health. And I'm looking forward to talking more today about youth mental health, but really we'll be talking a lot about family mental health. So our agenda for this evening, and for, I promise I'll cover all of this in about 15 or 20 minutes, is thinking about supporting youth and family mental health. I'll talk about what are symptoms of a mental health concern, especially for adolescents. What does this look like? Most importantly, talking about strategies to promote mental health and well-being and resiliency. And we'll be highlighting resources that you have in your own building. Lots of great mental health resources right in your community. And so just to tell you a little bit about our center, we're funded by the Health Resources and Services Administration. We lead the National Quality Initiative focused on comprehensive school mental health services. And our mission is to strengthen policies and programs in school mental health to improve learning and promote success for America's youth. We focus on advancing school mental health research, training, policy, and practice at the local, state, and national, federal levels. As I mentioned, we're located at University of Maryland School of Medicine, but I actually live just right over the line in DC here. And so I'm really glad to be, talking with your community about how we support students, how we support our kids and ourselves during this time. So this is an image I used for the keynote that I did with the MCPS mental health fair, but it's kind of how I'm summarizing 2020, or at least parts of it, right? That it's a torrential downpour and then our umbrella breaks on top of things. And so, I think recognizing this and then really having some conversations about knowing that we're all in this helps us to move to this idea about resilience. So how do we go from like our umbrella being flipped over and feeling like we're in a really bad place to identifying mental health concerns, getting the supports we need, and proactively, or in the midst of this, like buffering against and supporting, kind of what we know is going on for ourselves, for our kids, and for our community. A lot of times we talk about, sort of mental health, and it was, this is for a subsample of youth that we want to be thinking about mental health, but especially this year, like this is all of us, right? We all are in this intense situation. And so I'll be talking a lot about mental health and well-being strategies, and these are things that we want to be talking about and thinking about for all of us. Everything I talk about for that applies for your children absolutely applies for ourselves as well as parents. And I think people use this analogy a lot of like you have to put your own mask on the airplane for oxygen. You have to be taking care of your own mental health and doing these things for yourselves if you're going to be able to be there for your family and for your kids. All right, so I'm going to start with some pretty sobering statistics that have recently come out. We know this is an intense time. We know that we had theories around that youth are struggling. If you're here and thinking about this, I'm sure that you have heard from your child or from your child's friends that mental health concerns were higher during this time and continue to be higher. But I bring these up again for this idea that we really need to be seriously thinking about mental health for every single student, every single child that we're thinking about. And so, this 1 in 4 number here, I think is really sobering, that everything that I'm going to be talking about today, we want to make sure that we're thinking about for all kids. And so, if you're thinking about 1 in 4, that means that every child, every youth knows someone who maybe had this, we're at this place. And, of course, this is not an attempt, but just, I think it really sort of highlights the severity of what this is looking like for adolescents. And, I think another stark number here is that, basically half of high school students are saying that they have moderate to extreme concerns about their mental health and reporting stress and anxiety. So what does that look like? How do we, I know as a parent, kind of the next step is like, okay, well, how do I operationalize those numbers? Seem scary. What do I do with that? And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about, signs of a potential mental health concern, but most importantly, like how to talk about this with your child, or how to support, your child if they have concerns about a friend. So I'll be getting to that as well. So, these are broad signs of a potential mental health concern. I'll get a little bit more into depression and anxiety as well. But so these are things that would look different than the usual. So we may, sort of see physical aches and pains as like something that's, oh, I got to talk to the PCP, keeping in mind that that could be something that with some of these other symptoms indicates more of a mental health concern. So spending more time alone, tiring easily, feeling hopeless. A lot of times that, and I'll talk about this with depression, this idea of feeling irritable or angry, that sometimes we think about depression, that's like, we think of that as being sad, but a lot of times, and especially with teens, that can look, more like irritability. And, this I think really has been helpful in terms of, we may not have, our kids may not say to us that, they're feeling sad or they're feeling down, and that we may see things more that's this kind of irritability, displaced frustration, numbing out. We see a lot of that, just on the computer all the time, or just scrolling through, through shows. And again, I think, a major thing that we want to think about for all of these symptoms is this different than what was happening before? Was this how your child normally was acting? Or, is this sort of like, this displaced frustration? Did you see that happening before? Does this feel like something new? And then is it combined with other symptoms? So do you see some of that displaced frustration with also combined with not wanting to do things they would normally want to do, or, less interest with being around other people. And so I'll dive, more specifically into some of these symptoms of depression or depressed mood, again, just as things to look out for, as, warning signs. And then, if we have one of these and it's fleeting, no, not a red flag, but if we start to see more of these and it's something that is not what you would, see in the past, that these are when you really want to think about, I want to have some conversations about this, but most importantly is to think about reaching out for some support. You have amazing school counselors. I'll get to and show some of the amazing resources that you have right on your website. They have virtual appointments that you can schedule with them. And so, thinking about this idea of like frustration or feelings of anger, again, this idea of irritability, I think it's tough because obviously activities have changed and there's less sort of availability of being able to engage in fun activities, and obviously there are limitations with the ways they can interact with family and friends. But do they sort of just like not show an interest in that anymore? Like, I don't even want to talk to someone online, or I'm just going to be in my room. And I know the teenagers spend a lot of time in their room and online, but again, does that feel different, and is it coupled with some of these other potential symptoms? And so these are some of these emotional symptoms, some additional behavioral symptoms. So changes in sleeping habits, changes in eating habits. It can go in either direction, sleeping a lot or having trouble sleeping, eating more or eating less. Seeing some of these things around slowed thinking, speaking, or body movement, or sort of the opposite, that kind of agitation. And so I just want to call out some of these symptoms around more severe symptoms around self-harm, or talking about suicide. So anytime there's any mention of that, we want to take that extremely seriously. Kids do not just say that, for attention. It's a huge red flag that's something we want to take very seriously and address. And I'll talk a little bit more about addressing that, or if you have concerns about that, and share a number of resources of if that's coming up. So also wanted to talk about some symptoms of anxiety. We can see with, with the pandemic and with additional stress happening around schoolwork or perhaps around having less opportunities, that, these ideas of excessive fears and worries, some of that can be exacerbated. Restlessness, excessive worrying and vigilance, nervous, restless, extremely stressed. And again, we can see a lot of these physical symptoms as well. So if you see kind of that happening, physical symptoms in combination with some of these emotional symptoms, that's when you might want to start to think about that this might be of concern. All right, so then, knowing these statistics, and if you're looking out and seeing some, sort of warning signs, or more proactively, you just want to make sure that you're talking about mental health, and that, you're not sort of waiting until you are concerned. How do you get these conversations going? I have some more strategies here, but really just starting to get talking about feelings on the table. And I think that can feel awkward, right? Like, we're not going to have a feelings conversation, as a family. That feels, a little corny. Or tell me how you're feeling today. But it's more of like modeling, how your day went in an honest way. Like, this went great for me today. Like, this went not so great, and I felt, pretty bad about it, or I felt embarrassed when this happened, or, kind of modeling sharing some of those feelings, and then letting your child then that sort of gives them permission and some space for you to then say, how was your day? Like, what went well? What went well? What went not so well? And I think that's like a key piece to ask, and to start to get in the habit of that, like what went well, what went not so well. Having daily check-ins and starting to have that sort of like daily, sort of conversation, and that can look different for sort of every kid and every family. Sometimes that can be hard to do in like a full family type of format, but it may be that you have a certain time where you check in, before you're going to bed, or at some point when you're helping with something with your child, and thinking about how can you intentionally sort of check in on how things are going, and how they're feeling. If you're concerned, asking direct questions. So, I think you can always start with the how is it going, but, definitely sharing if you have an area of concern. I noticed that, you got really angry about X today, or it seems like, you didn't want to do X with friends. And then asking that in a way that allows them to be honest and open by saying, this is a really tough time right now. Like, I know I'm feeling that this is a tough time. I know many kids and parents are feeling like frustrated, upset, whatever you think the thing is that they're potentially feeling, and giving them some space that, like, it's okay for them to say, yeah. I think oftentimes we ask questions that that unintentionally shut down that conversation. Like, how are you doing? Fine. Like, then see you later, get out of here. And so really thinking about trying to give some space to share, that this may be something that that they're feeling, and that would be okay, because other people have felt that that same way. And again, like this idea that it's okay to not be okay. So I think we're modeling that that we can talk about feelings, we can talk about how things are going, and that's sort of the first step, is to be able to to open up about that. And then building connections with you, but also with their peers too. So making sure that they're connected. If you notice that those relationships seem to be changing, and you don't feel like your child has those sort of positive relationships, and making sure they're that they're positive. I know some of those relationships can not be as supportive. But this idea of, it's okay to not be okay, and making sure they're connecting. as well. And as I said, anything I'm talking about for adolescents, I'm also talking about for us too. So when things aren't going well, sometimes we want to keep that to ourselves, and we sort of get in a cycle of like not talking about it and not reaching out for help, or even just not connecting because we're feeling bad about things. And so just a reminder to us as parents to make sure that we're continuing to get those connections and get that support. So this is a great resource that's on the MCPS mental health website, but it highlights a lot of strategies that we can think about. So a couple that I highlighted during my broader presentation, but really just that I highlight in any presentation about thinking about how to support youth mental health during this time is this idea of being patient. Like, this is intense for all of us. And so, let's be thoughtful around, being patient, but then also giving credit. Like, we may not be able to get as much done as we typically would. And like, that's okay. Like, that's where we are. And so that same type of idea, for our teens, this idea of being proud of them. I can't emphasize this enough, especially with teenagers. So, they're not going to sort of be, pushing for our positive attention in the same way that younger kids are, but they need this just as much as younger kids. And we all do. It feels great when, our boss or someone, a friend said that we did a great job about something, with something. And so really thinking about, are there ways that you can kind of on a daily basis build that in? I saw a great example of a family I was working with where, they kind of, because it can sometimes feel cheesy, like, how do we do that for teens? They're like, okay mom, okay dad, like but just this example of that, like the college sports team, they had like a type of award that went out to sports players on a daily basis, like at practice when they did something well, and they had this sort of whole system for it. And so framing it in a way that feels age appropriate, that's maybe feels less cheesy and more more something that's applicable. And it doesn't have to be that that formal. It can be just as much of a that was hard and I'm impressed that you did that. And even if you get an eye roll, they're still hearing it, right? Like and that feels really good, and it builds them up and fills their cup. Lots of other strategies that are on here as well. Thinking about making sure that they have downtime. A lot of this, around being available for listening, and catching when your teen, it's typically not at the most opportune time, or when you're there and like are ready to sit down and have a conversation, but really being tuned into when they may bring something up, and taking that opportunity, and talking with them about feelings, getting that going. And again, I say talk about feelings, that feels like cheesy and psychologist-y, but it's really just like talking about how your day is going, and when things are going well and when they're not, and when things are hard. So those are things that, as a parent, to help to support your child during this time. Many of these things are similar, for what you can encourage your child to do. Thinking about things on a daily basis. How are you encouraging your child, but also yourself, to think about physical health, good sleep and eating well and exercise? Those are things that kind of can go out the window when we're stressed, and then it becomes this sort of vicious cycle. So really, ways to promote mental health are to really sort of get regimented about getting back into those things that help us to stay physically healthy. And then thinking about what can you do each day as a way to, keep that, sort of positive things going, like what's something that you like to do as a family or individually you all like to do, and just making sure that every day you're doing something that keeps things rolling in a positive direction. There's a lot of negativity, there's a lot of frustration, and so how can we like intentionally make sure that we're doing this? And this is something too, you know, I like that this has this idea of like scheduling a time when you can sit down and check in with your family. This may be something that you could share, you know, sort of this resource. It's on the MCPS website, on their mental health website, right on the homepage. And again, this idea of like encouraging that interaction. There are some really nice resources on this website called Seize the Awkward, for helping to support teens to have mental health conversations with their friends around you know, mental health concerns. And so there's a lot of, you know, conversation starters. So especially, you know, if this is something that you feel like your child wants more information about how to talk with friends, or if they're concerned about a friend, some great resources on here. And then there are also resources just for promoting their own mental health during COVID. And there are some cool stories from folks that may resonate more than parents about sharing about mental health and you know, starting conversations. So some nice resources. This is all on the Seize the Awkward page. And so continuing to think about how to promote mental health and well-being. So I just want to, again, sort of highlight these bigger picture. So building connections, fostering wellness. I've talked about both of those, but again, this idea of like shifting the, you know, the way that we're thinking about things. So we can often get really stuck in this, you know, sort of negative, this isn't going the way, you know, this isn't going the way I wanted to, this year isn't going the way I wanted to, and we can get in a pretty negative spiral. But how do we then kind of shift to like, what can I control? You know, what are the small steps that I can take towards what's my ultimate goal for this year, for whatever the thing is? You know, I may not be able to, you know, go to X party or have X party, or, you know, whatever the thing is, but like, what do I really want to get out of that? And how do I make that happen? And how do I move towards that in the current environment? And so that really helps to kind of foster this, you know, sort of regaining of control that we've lost. And then, you know, most importantly, just seeking help. So I've talked a fair amount about strategies that you can help to support, but I'll, you know, sort of next be transitioning into, if you have concerns about your child's mental health, you know, sort of, okay, what do you do from there? And again, just more summary here about, you know, kind of wellness strategies. So these are kind of my top 4. So talk to each other, acknowledge feelings, even the difficult ones. This idea of being patient and proud, planning safe and positive activities, and getting connected. All right, so if you have concerns, you know, sort of immediate concerns about your child's mental health, or a friend's mental health, in bold here are your crisis hotlines. So you can call either of these 24/7 for immediate mental health assistance. So the crisis hotline is a phone service where they can, you know, immediately talk with you or your child about a mental health concern. The Montgomery County Crisis Center also has, can get you set up with immediate mental health services. So like if you're feeling like this is really pressing, you know, your child has mentioned, or a friend of a child has mentioned anything around hurting themselves, you know, you want to go with these crisis hotlines. They also have, the crisis center also has mobile crisis, and so they can come to you if there's a, you know, significant mental health concern. And even if you're just not sure, you know, call. They're available. It's available 24/7, and they may say, you know, you're fine, we can get you set up with something in the next week or so. But these are important numbers to have just available, knowing that this is a really challenging time. Okay, and then please use your resources that are available. So, I couldn't give this presentation tonight without being able to link you directly to what was going on at your school. And of course, I'm blown away by the amazing things that you have. So right on the homepage, I'm sure y'all have been there a lot this year. On the left side is a quick link for counseling services. And if you click on that, they have a whole section around scheduling a virtual mental health visit with your school counselor. And it's, all the school counselors are listed, and they have their counselor time availability, and you can email them. They also have those crisis numbers on there that I mentioned. And you have amazing resources as part of the MCPS system, the best in the country. I work with with schools and districts across the nation, and just have been blown away by all the things that are available as part of this Be Well 365, which is the county's mental health work. So use those. Start at your school level, but know that district level information is there, and get started with those. Again, just even to ask, feel free to schedule, a visit with a school counselor and say, I just want to run some of these things by you. I don't know if my teen will be willing to talk to you or not, but I just want to get started with this. There's no harm in that. And so, really just want to encourage folks to be proactive about that. So another great resource, again, I had to do some digging and sort of what exists, and so many great things. So there's a Montgomery County specific Be the One website. And again, this is another resource similar to the Seize the Awkward, which includes some very specific information to help teens talk with their friends about mental health concerns. And there are also some really nice resources in here just for parents to check out around conversation starters about mental health. Says, similar things to, what I talked about around being direct, and, asking questions, specific questions, if you're concerned. We have a number of resources on our website. We're schoolmentalhealth.org. We have specific pages for COVID resources, for cultural responsiveness and equity. And we have a number of resources on there that are family and youth facing. So there's, a subsection for all of those. If you want to look more into ways to continue to, support your child during this time. So that is my speed run through of, thinking about mental health for teens and especially during this time. And I'm happy to answer questions. I have this image here because this is something that helps me to feel a little bit calmer. It's like, an easy thing that I'm incorporating into my routine is I gotta just see more pictures of beaches because that brings me back to neutral a little bit more. And so, really thinking about what are these small things that we can do for ourselves and to help to encourage our, our teens to do to help to promote our mental health. So with that, happy to answer questions.
Well, I'll jump in with a question. Well, a little bit of a statement too. So, we've been in this, thinking it was maybe going to be short term, and now it's, seems like it's longer term. And so the teens are definitely missing all their connections with their school and their teachers, but certainly their big connections with the other students, their peers. And they're so limited right now in being able to connect. And so I think that seems to be such a challenge for them because everything is virtual. They're on social media. I think they were on social media a lot before, but now it's even more now. And, it's not the most healthy. Social media has its pros and cons. and certainly it's great when you can get together outside, but now we're getting into the fall and winter where it's going to be really hard. So how do we keep our teens engaged, connected to their peers, and just feeling like they're not completely isolated?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think the more that you can do some of those outdoor, activities. I mean, we talk about this for all ages, as we're going into the winter and thinking about it, and seeing more of the science come out that, really with masks, that outdoor space and 6 feet apart, really can help with that. And so I know it's even more challenging with teens. We want to give them, sort of their autonomy, but we know they might not always be great with wearing masks. And so how do we think about, sort of balancing that? Can it be something where, they can be outside with some friends, but it's, in our backyard, or, somewhere where we still can have some sort of parameters on that, and having some conversations. Because I do think, I absolutely agree with you that, I think that many youth were already engaged in social media, and there's some pros and cons to that. And so this idea that's sort of all they're engaged in is definitely not, not positive from mental health. So I think really try to pushing for, even as the winter months approach, some activities that, it can be a safe social distance outdoor, to really let them have that. And we see those behaviors improve when we're able to, it's a really positive cycle, right? Like if they're able to do that, if they're able to get outside and do that, then they may be more willing to, to do other things, and their mood may, sort of improve. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're in a really challenging position, as parents with this, but I think it's something that's critical to continue to push forward, is that face-to-face interaction. I'll say one more thing about that too, is just, instead of just having them, maybe up in their room on the computer, encouraging some time where, like, they're downstairs. I know they probably don't love that, like, can't have the same types of conversations, but it does allow for some of that kind of natural, like, you getting to see their friends that you would typically have, if kids were coming over. So thinking about, this is an hour that you're not in your room, and you can still be on the computer, but, like, it's got to be down here type of thing. Looks like I saw some questions coming in here too. Okay, so what should you do if your child is self-isolating because they don't feel their friends are being safe, so they don't want to be with them? Yeah, that is a really challenging one. And, I think thinking about, are there any friends that, are being safe, and that, is it sort of an all or nothing? And or in a smaller group, are there some that might be more willing, right? We can have a lot of, like, the peer pressure dynamics that are going on, that, in a bigger group, if one person's not wearing a mask, then no one wants, then no one's going to wear a mask. But do your teens have one friend that they think are more like-minded, that maybe you could have that person over for, social distance, in the yard, or meet up with that person? But yeah, it's challenging, or even thinking more creatively of, like, sort of outside of their immediate friend group that they typically hang out with. Is there someone that they, were doing things with outside of school that, may be more safe? But really trying to, kind of think outside the box of ways to make sure that they're engaging with, with some peers that feel positive.
Can I follow up to that and just say that part of the problem I think that we have in our house is that I don't feel like I know my daughter's her friends' parents well enough to kind of interrogate them about their safety, to really know how do I know if I can trust them, right? Like, we kind of casually knew each other before this pandemic, like, well enough to have, play dates, but I don't know if I know them well enough to know that they're being safe, in general, right? Like, how do it's a hard decision. And so like, we haven't been letting her go to people's houses just because we just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real challenge. I think COVID has added this like extremely complicated additional layer of like monitoring and risk. Parenting was hard enough when you were worried about them going over for XYZ things that you were worried about. And so I've talked with parents around like sort of conceptualizing it as another thing that you would do in the same way. So it may be that you feel more comfortable having people over, to your yard, or taking that, meeting up at the park, or, wherever it is, where you feel like you can have a little bit more control over, sort of the parameters. But I think it's hard. And I would open it up to, I think a lot of these questions are around the logistics of how do we make things that we know are important for our kids happen. And so I would open it up to the rest of you too, to sort of, are there things that other folks have done to help with these things, that you've found successful in terms of being able to connect with, with sort of families that you feel like are kind of at the same level around safety?
I can share what I've done for my daughter, but this even happened before COVID. She had, friends she'd met in school. She wanted to hang out with them. I was like, I don't know who they are, but being that she was a new teenager, I just felt that I had to take it upon myself to get to know the parents. So I asked her to ask her friend if she could share, her mom's number or that. And I made the effort to call and engage, asked if we could do tea. And it was a very pleasant meeting, but at least that built trust. And I knew if my daughter had to go over, or they were hanging out somewhere, I feel like to go to the mall, that another parent just cared as much, at least for their safety. So at times like this, that happened just before COVID happened, like a few months. So it kind of carried over. So we called, what's safe for you? Of course, you cannot trust everything, but to the extent they ask, have you been exposed? Do you go out in this? And she had a friend who said, I went for a wedding 4 weeks ago, so I would rather they don't come to visit till a month, so I can quarantine. So some level of trust that way. Take it upon yourself to reach out to the parents and get to know them as adults. And yeah.
If I could just jump in, I'll share that one way we've dealt with that issue of not knowing what's on the other side really is by kind of taking it on ourselves and saying we're really sticklers for the mask wearing and physical distancing, and kind of throwing it out there that, would you be okay with that stringent? So like, for example, if I was gonna take a person's son or daughter to in a carpool situation, then request that everybody in the car would wear a mask, right? So that's a way of giving them an kind of an idea of how strict you are, and maybe then that helps them know, and then maybe then they're either more comfortable or less comfortable with hanging out with you anyway. So I mean, that's kind of worked for us, but I don't think it'll work in every situation. I have a quick question for you, Jill, if you
Sure.
want.
Yeah.
So the schools actually have done a lot in this, especially providing for the students time to come and talk to either the peers or to talk to the counselors. So that has, for sure, the school system is doing a really great job with that. But, oftentimes, at least, the one teenager I have is not really interested in engaging in that setting, right? Like, so they have me, and then they have the counselors or that virtual environment. Are there strategies that we could use how do we encourage them to talk to each other about it? I know you said that was one important thing, is like connecting with each other and talking about mental health and feelings and things like that. Are there any like tips on how to actually make that happen?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would direct them towards like that Seize the Awkward or Be the One
Okay.
website. I think you can say things like, how are you and your friends dealing with this? Like, and I use the example for everything. Like, I bring it back to giving them some permission of like, I know this is hard for me, and I talk with my friends about how this is hard. Like, do you and your friends talk about this? Are there friends, that you feel like you can have conversations, about how things are going, and sort of gauging their, their response there. And then, if there are friends you're concerned about, or you feel like you just want to have more ideas around, I think this idea of seize the awkward, like, this was teen driven, right? It feels awkward. And so the whole idea is like seizing that, that awkward. And I think some of those videos to see, again, some folks that perhaps are more meaningful than us old adults, I think can help too. So directing them, to some of those things, I think might be useful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Looks like we have another question in the chat too.
Oh, sure. Okay, great. Do you have suggestions or a framework for how to make decisions on limitations for our kids? How to decide to make an exception? It's okay to go inside someone else's house, even though it makes you uncomfortable, given the potential benefit to students' mental health. So I talk about this kind of at a national scale. There are American Academy of Pediatrics has put out information that we really need to be thoughtful around balancing, caution around COVID with, these intense mental health concerns that we're seeing for youth. And so, I think all of it is a balance. And so I think we want to balance both of those things. So, right, it probably doesn't make sense for there to be, 10 kids or 20, 20 kids that you're regularly interacting with. Like that feels, sort of out of the bubble. But like, can they have three friends that you feel comfortable, or even one, sort of you get your ball rolling, that you feel comfortable with what the family is doing, them well enough, that you could have, sort of that limitation be down to buy them a little bit more time. I know, across the country, we've seen that happening and being positive, that, let's be very, continue to be limited in that, but perhaps expanding that group a little bit, just to balance some of that and to get some of those mental health supports. So, not having it be that it's, sort of always okay to go into someone's house, or perhaps it's okay to go and use the bathroom, but you have to come right back out, and kind of I think the summary is like every family is going to do what, should think about and do what they feel comfortable with in terms of, COVID. And thinking about incorporating some more connections for teens, just knowing how high that sort of mental health risk is. And so then how do you do that in a gradated way? And then have very clear, as you said, like expectations for your child, so they know. So it's, you can, we're going to be, connecting more with whatever family this is going to be, or what other, one person, but that's just for this person, this family or this group. And so anytime you're anywhere else, like, you got to have your mask on, we can't just go into someone's house. And then what if they do, if a problem arises? Like, I said, it's like this, as if we didn't have enough to deal with in terms of safety with parents, like it's this additional layer, but it's the same, I think those same strategies that we use around, like, what would you do if you were somewhere where, there was alcohol and you didn't feel comfortable? I think those same types of things we need to make sure we're thinking about, prepping our kids for, and just knowing how important some social interaction is for them, like not having that be a complete barrier, that like, let's make sure that we put those things in place so they can still, get out and have some safe interaction. Let's see, is there another one in here? Okay. I agree that these are exceptional times, and I've talked with my kids' friends' parents about things I would never normally ask them. Yep. That it's, kind of forced us to have more of these conversations than we would. And I'll just, echo again that that level of stress that's putting back on us is a lot. And so like acknowledging that is really important. Like I know I spent a lot of time being like, this year is a bummer. And that's probably not the word I use. Like bummer is not the word. But like, then it's like, okay, like it gives me some space to be like, this is hard. What do I have to do to make sure that I get through this? Like, how do I make sure that, I'm, putting on my air mask, whether that's, going for a run or listening to music or taking, a half hour to myself, and then, and recognizing like just how much extra effort it's taking to make sure you're getting these things going for your children, just giving yourself, kind of like credit for that, but then also some space to recoup from that, or to, sort of get back to neutral. Okay, suggestion about when taking a daughter to the doctor's office and they don't follow protocol. Well, I'm more of the mental health person here. And so I wish I had some of these answers, for COVID questions. And I hear you, like, when we go in a space and we feel like it's not safe, I think, it's again, this using our same parenting skills that we would in other things. If we went into a situation where we felt it was unsafe, like, I think those things apply, in this situation. So, having those conversations about, about safety, or deciding that it feels unsafe and leaving, and relying on, each other. I think that's a similar type of question that, I put back, not for us to, we don't have to go through an answer tonight, but like lean on other, other parents or other folks, if they've seen things like that. How did they handle it? Have they had more positive experiences other places? It's tough times.
Do we have any other questions? You don't have to write them in the chat. You can feel free to unmute and just ask them if you have any.
One more question I have. As we think through whether or not the kids are going to go back, I'm just wondering, and this might be a multi-tiered question, I'm just wondering how you are working with supporting, school leaders, educators on the psychological preparation, right, for kids to go back, because it's going to be a mixed bag. Some kids would, be ready. I've been locked up for too long. Some will be very cautious, like, I still want to practice safe distancing, and also parents as well. So should that be the case? Is that part of the conversation of what would I say mental health support should be given proactively in preparation for what might come?
Absolutely. I mean, you can feel very confident in your school system that you, again, have, I work with schools and districts across the country in terms of mental health supports in the schools, and mental health supports being like everything from, direct services, but more importantly, for just what you're saying, like, how are we thinking about that all youth are coming back, having had this really intense year, varying levels of intense year, but that, everyone is going to need some sorts of mental health supports. And I can imagine that your principal and her team, and I know district-wide, I've had lots of conversations with them, that they're being really thoughtful around this. They're being thoughtful right now around how are they incorporating conversations about mental health and checking about mental health into what they're doing, on a daily basis. And so I feel confident that that will be a part of the conversation as they're coming back, but definitely advocate for that. And, when you have opportunities to provide feedback, I know you'll have parent surveys and those types of things. Share how important that is. And yeah, I think the district and is being really thoughtful around that. And I think we'll continue to be, and it's absolutely critical when we're going back, when that does happen, to have space for that. We talk a lot about that. There may be some of this push that we need to get right into academics, and how do we make sure that we're sort of hitting the ground running with that, but making sure we're thinking about mental health and making sure people are even able to get into academics kind of requires that mental health happening first.
I would just say that's an excellent question. And I also think to start now in having, the conversation with the parent survey about coming back to school, that's a wonderful opportunity to open up the question of, well, how do you feel about that? What have you imagined what it would be like to walk back into the school, and really get a sense of where your student is with that idea and that notion. And then, of course, in the school, we are preparing for the physical return, but we also have to prepare for the social emotional return. We're talking about ninth graders who've never stepped foot in our building. We're talking about sophomores through seniors who have a lot of, anxiety about returning. So that's definitely part of the planning and the conversation. And I think of it as what we do to prepare, in order for students to be able to connect to the learning, we first have to have a safe environment. So we always, we do work around, unfortunately, fire drills and all of these other things that students understand the routines and what safety protocols are put in place to make sure that they're safe in the building. And of course, in a very similar way, looking at the social emotional needs of coming back and transitioning back to the building after being gone so long is definitely something that's very high on our priority to make sure that that's in place for our students and continues to be in place as we transition students back.
That safety is great. I'm like cheering over here, and I thank you so much for chiming in. I knew you all were in good hands, and thanks for articulating, sort of just how planful you all are being around that. I know that's important for me as a parent to hear, and I'm sure is helpful for all parents on this call to hear.
Any other questions? No? Okay, well, thank you so much for being here tonight. I think this was a great conversation, and we recorded this, so plenty of other parents are going to have access to this resource, even going forward. So I'm glad that we have it recorded, and it's even for anyone on this call who wants to go back and revisit it, it's going to be available. So thank you. Brian, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you as well. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was a very interesting and very helpful conversation. So thank you very much.
Sure, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being so dedicated in terms of thinking about this, for your children, and lots of resources within your school. So definitely, and within your district. So definitely use those. And if there's anything that I can be of help with, please don't hesitate to reach out again. It was nice to get to meet all of you.
Thank you.
Good luck with the rest of this year as we all muddle through it together.
Yes,
Thank
it's already
you.
been a long year.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
All right.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.